Hey guys, Oliver from Rugby League and My Opinion here, and today's the third instalment of the quiz series. I will be quizzing Adam Wright, Uruguay Rugby League head coach and Manly Warringah Seagulls mega fan on Manly club history. Now, about halfway through the video, the quiz actually ends, and Righty and I end up chatting, and you'll come to learn just how knowledgeable Righty is about rugby league. We end up getting into a chat about expansion. So just sit back, relax, enjoy the quiz, and then enjoy Righty's take on expansion and a couple other topics too. As I said, you'll come to learn about how knowledgeable this man is about rugby league, and I definitely want to get him back on the channel soon.
Give me a
Alrighty, guys, I'm here with massive Manly Warringah Seagulls fan, the right man. Righty, how are you today?
Good, mate. How's life? Hope you're well.
Yeah, doing all right. Locked down, but pushing through it. Before we get into the quiz, though, I just want to ask you a quick question. Obviously, as well as being a massive Manly fan, you are the head coach of Uruguay Rugby League. Obviously, with the lockdown in New South Wales and the current COVID situation, there must be some sort of impact that's had on being able to get the guys together, because I know some of the boys are interstate and a lot of the players are New South Wales based. What are sort of the plans for the immediate future, I guess, at the moment with Uruguay Rugby League, and how's that been impacted by the current situation?
We have a game teed up in Sydney at some point against a Japan 13. So whenever COVID allows us, we're hoping to play. So and unfortunately, it was in Western Sydney, or the Western suburbs, right out. Last time we played was at Liverpool too. So right in the heart of it. If not, fingers crossed, if we don't get a game this year, we're looking to put a side in at the Cabramatta Nines next February. So, which should be a great experience. First time ever. So we're aiming to do both of those, but it may not be viable with COVID, etc. So hopefully we can at least get the Nines in come February. Hopefully everything's good for you guys down that way, and it all starts to come, and COVID starts settling, and we may be able to squeeze a game in late November, but there's no guarantee of that. So at the moment, it's probably the Nines are the most realistic thing.
Yeah, well, I saw something today. At least I think it's 6 million Australians have now had their first jab, or 6 million people in New South Wales, maybe even. So hopefully we're on our way. We're pushing forward, and hopefully I'm sure we'll get to see you guys play again at least in 2022. Fingers crossed beforehand, though. What's your knowledge like of the Manly Warringah Seagulls?
Yeah, I'm fair. I've followed them for a long time. I know a bit. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, a lot of people will remember we were actually talking about you, Freedy and I, on the Broncos one, and he was talking about, Righty would have got 10 out of 10. He would have got this right, that right, everything right. And I said, we'd have to get
I think he told me the questions. I got about 8, I think 8 or 9. So it was
right.
I couldn't remember how many times Ranoff had scored 4 tries.
But see, other than that, there were a couple of really, I wouldn't say really hard questions, but some that definitely make you think. So that's a good effort. And we've sort of hyped it up, and the people have been wondering when I'm going to get the right man on to chat a bit about Manly. So if you're ready to go, we'll jump straight into the first question.
Yeah, let's go.
All righty. When did Manly first make the grand final? Make their first grand final, I should say.
First grand final. This one I'll have to have a bit of a guess on. I think it was 1970.
You're a bit off there.
Yeah, I know they did make one then. That was just before the success. Yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that? I'm only guessing.
It was actually 1951.
51, 4 years after they entered.
Yeah, and it was against the team who they versed in 1970, South Sydney, and they lost in the grand final to them. Yeah, because I believe sort of just before the Dragons' sort of 11-year run, I think just beforehand, Souths went on a bit of a run, and just after, I know Souths went on a bit of a run as well. A couple of good errors there from South Sydney sort of preceding, and just after that 11-year run from the Dragons, obviously not remembered as well due to the Dragons' run. So we're 0 from 1 so far, but I feel like we'll be all right. When did Manly last win the minor premiership?
96. 95, they won it, and I thought they won it 96 too.
They did, but they also won in 97.
97 Super League, yes. The ARL Super League year, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously they went on to then lose to Newcastle in the grand final. But that era, 95 to 97, arguably the greatest era in Manly history. What would you say?
They were a fantastic side. I thought from 2007 to 2011 was pretty much up there with that.
Yeah.
That was a real in those mid-90s, that was a real turning point because they were in a lot of semi-finals early and they just couldn't make a grand final. Then they made 3 grand finals in a row. And then after Super League, they were everyone got old and sides got better, and unfortunately they didn't.
Yeah, well, they also went on to form the Northern Eagles, I believe, from 2000 to 2002 with North Sydney.
And that failed miserably, and players getting promised money that they didn't have. That was just an absolute disaster, that, for both sides. And it was just lucky Manly had the licence that once it disbanded, they'd be able to resurrect themselves as Manly. And it was barely. 2003, they came back, and it was a real patched up side. I reckon they only won 5-6 games that year.
Yeah. Well, the third question now, row from 2, but you were close. When did Manly win their first and only World Club Challenge?
2009.
Correct.
Against Leeds. Yeah.
Leeds, yeah. That Leeds side as well. A lot of people over here at least seem to forget that sort of mid to late 2000s era. That's when they had sort of the top talent in England over there. And that's when there was a bit of money in Super League, I believe. And they had a couple of really good players like Yarli Lautides going over there. And they were a dominant side.
Matt King went for big money too. Matt King left after 2007, left the Storm. And he went for the equivalent of 900 grand at the time.
Yeah, right.
So, guys like that, the cash was massive.
Yeah, because obviously we think of the Melbourne side, 07-09, to be a dominant football side, but I believe the year before in the World Club Challenge, I think Leeds actually beat that 07-08 Melbourne side. So there you go. But they weren't able to beat Manly.
Yeah, that was a fair effort because after...
So we're 1 from 3.
Yep, I'm back on the horse.
Alrighty.
That Leeds side was super quality, and they had a decent record against the Aussie sides for a while because I don't know if they took it as serious, but they always seemed to get ambushed over there. But which is that was a big game.
I think Manly were the first team for a while to actually beat a Super League team over there. There was just a period where they won a bunch in a row.
St Helens beat the Broncos, Leeds beat Melbourne, and then Manly beat them in that 3-year period. So that was a fair effort to win that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we're 1 from 3 so far. We're back in it. The next one. How many Manly players have won the Wally Lewis medal? So obviously, player of the series in State of Origin.
1, Turbo.
Correct. I thought I might have been able to get you with that one.
I had to think too because I've had quite a lot of Origin players, but no one's ever won the Lewis medal. I had to think too hard on that.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw it. That's why I thought, cool, get it straight in because I would have, that was shocking. All the Manly players who have gone on to play Origin and for Australia, you'd have to think somewhere in there, one of them had won a player of the series, but now they have, but for so long they didn't. And Tom Trbojevic, 2021, the first one, so a bit of history made this year.
Especially with all the Queenslanders they've had over the years in those dominant periods.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, hit me with the next one.
The next one, okay, so we're 50%. at the moment. We're going for 3 from 5 in this one, which is how many games did Cliff Lyons play for Manly?
It was over 300. I think it was 309.
Yeah, 309.
Yeah, I was thinking 300. I thought it was between. I knew it was between 304 and 309. I knew that's a pretty amazing effort for a bloke like him.
Oh, definitely, and that isn't even the amount of games he played in his career. I believe he had a season at North Sydney before he went to Manly.
And then went back to the country, and went back out to the country, and then got signed to Manly. Yeah, it was an incredible journey, and he kept playing after he left Manly. He was playing down the Central Coast for a few years, so and then came back and was playing the local comp at Manly. So he was he'd been a big part of the club. Cliff, like he was. What was it? He was a reserve grade coach for a period of time there, New South Wales Cup coach. Like, yeah, he's still on like he's still on board for like past players and that, like deal things. So he was my favourite player as a kid. The greatest non-block shaped ball player I've ever seen. Just some blokes are natural. His sleight of hand was ridiculous. The amount of tries he set up, not just for Beaver, but for other blokes. Just that instinctive player. Looked like a country footballer playing in the big time. Played for Australia, played for New South Wales.
Yeah, well, I've actually got an old VHS tape just through the years that Dad's gotten. It's the 87 grand final. I remember watching it growing up, and obviously he won the Clive that year, the Clive Churchill medal. And I remember him just carving up, controlling play. I think he pretty much had a hand. I know he scored the first try, but I think he had a hand in every try Manly scored that day.
He was killing it. Yeah, they had a great side that year. And they beat Canberra with Melbourne Inga and the assistant coach was Wayne Bennett.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we're 3 from 5 at the moment, righty. We're heading into question 6. And that is, which Manly player scored 27 tries in 1983? This is the most tries any Manly player has scored in a single season.
Phil Blake.
Correct. Phil Blake.
Phil Blake was a sensation. He was, he didn't play much rep footy, but he did play one game for New South Wales and I think a bit of City Country, but he played a lot of clubs and he was electrifying, Phil Blake, when he was on. He coached rugby union too. He was coaching the Manly Marlins too, so he was a full Manly boy. He went to South after that. Yeah. But he was a Manly junior. Had a brother, Michael Blake, big centre, who played first grade with him at Manly and went to South with him too, I think. So he was a had a big connection with the Northern Beaches community. Phil Blake. He was an Uber driver not that long ago on the beaches.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, well, you look at 27 tries in a single season. I personally can't think of the last time a player...
That was phenomenal back then, especially too, you're talking the 80s.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. Like, now the game's fast. It's designed to score points a bit more. But, that definitely wasn't then. That was old school, 5 metres. So with a guy like his speed and that, and he hadn't... Chip and chase was his go-to play. He played about 5 clubs. And he's also scored the first try for the Warriors ever in 95.
Really?
That's where he finished his career, was at the Warriors last couple of years.
Because I know he played for Manly and Souths, but I didn't know
he played the grand final for St George and they lost to the Broncos in 93.
Right.
Phil Blake, so he's been around the traps.
Yeah. Well, we're 4 from 6 at the moment. We're going good. The next one, who has scored the most points for Manly in a single season?
This is a trick question because it was Matt Ridge, but now Garrick's just beaten that the other week.
He has.
So the season hasn't finished, but it was Matt Ridge. And that was in 95 when they dominated the comp but lost the grand final.
Well, I'm going to give you the point because I've got Garrick down here. Obviously, the season hasn't finished, but he has surpassed it. So you're correct.
He's on track to beat Hazem El Magic's record.
Yeah. So thus far in 2021, he's got 274 points for the season, And you'd have to think the way things are looking, Manly end up finishing 4th. So that's at least 4 more games this year. Could crack the 300. Could crack the 300.
Yeah, that'd be a phenomenal achievement for a guy like Garrick.
Oh,
He's not like Matt Ridge was a great fullback though, like rugby convert, was in the All Black squad. He wasn't the starting fullback, and Graham Lowe got him over. There's a doco on him, where John Kerwin, one of his mates who was All Black, he filmed his journey in his first sort of season in league, and yeah, he wasn't a big bloke either. He was super competitive. I reckon he was a lethal sledger, great goal kicker, just a footballer, fierce competitor. You know what I mean? Just carved his career out like that. But yeah, Matt Ridge was a real good footballer.
Yeah, right. Well, we're 5 from 7 at the moment. We're going for 6 from 8 now. How long is Manly's longest winning streak?
Oh, longest winning streak?
Yeah.
It was in 95.
Correct.
I remember that. Yep. And I think it was 15 games.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was round 1 to 15. So they started the season.
They were just killing sides, and they just sort of ran out. They peaked too early, and they come to the finals. They limped in, and the next year when they won it, they were totally defence oriented. Yeah, they were totally different. But yeah, I remember that well. That was an enjoyable year to watch footy, and they had a couple of high scorers, real high scoring games. They beat North Sydney 30-0. They played the Western Reds, and it was like 50 to 28 or something, or 26.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, which was pretty incredible for that time, like in the mid-90s.
Well, that season, 95, we've brought it up a few times now, not necessarily as an answer, but we've referred back to it. They didn't win the comp. They made the grand final, Manly. It was such a dominant season. They get to the grand final. They lose to the Bulldogs, who didn't even finish in the top 4. It's the last time a team from outside the top 4 has won the grand final. What do you remember from that 1995 grand final? Was there much shock? Because I take it Manly were heavy favourites.
Yeah, and it was just the Bulldogs had been building. They'd beat Canberra the week before. A couple of things went against Manly. Little things like that. The Dogs scored a try on a seventh tackle, so that was like late in the game. Things like that, like a couple of 50-50 calls, but you make your own luck, and they did that. They had a great side. That was before those boys like Smith and that had defected to the ARL and went to Parramatta. Terry Lamb, Jim Dimmick. Dimmick was the Churchill medalist, I think. They just were a bit too good. They had Dean Britt's old man, Darren Britt playing. He went on to play for Australia a few years later, big front rower who could ball play a bit. Yeah, they just had a really good... Jared McCracken was there, but he'd fallen out with coach Chris Anderson, and he left the club, I think. So they did it without Jared McCracken.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they had Rod Silver at fullback. He came over that year from East, from the Roosters earlier in the year, and they won the comp.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, but did they finish 5th that year? Do you know what exact position?
Yeah, they beat St George in the last couple of minutes to go through. That was in the knockout, and they kept winning like back then. Yeah, so they had to play someone. I forget who they beat next, and then they beat Canberra to get in. They just kept rolling on. You just build momentum.
Yeah, so I guess they weren't too dissimilar from the 09 Eels, you could say. Obviously, that Eels side couldn't get the job done, but sort of getting that momentum, being sort of the hottest team heading into the grand final, not necessarily the best on the ladder.
And they didn't have like a superstar like the Eels did that time. Yeah. And they had Jason Hetherington, Kobe Hetherington from the Broncos' dad, who Hetherington went on to play for Australia a few years later. He was tough like a tough hooker. Yeah. They just had a lot of good players.
Yeah.
They just kept turning up and getting it done.
Yeah. Well, we're 6 from 8. We're going for 7 from 9 now. This one might be very hard. It is, who was Manly's first captain? So all the way back in 47.
Nah, you got me on that one.
Nah, got ya? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought this one might be a bit hard. Max Whitehead. So,
Max Whitehead. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, props
I
to
remember
Max
that.
Whitehead.
Yeah. That's a pretty prestige honour to be first captain of a club that has this steeped in tradition like they are.
Yeah. Well, now, you think about what Manly has gone on to become. Obviously, not a lot of us would remember a Max Whitehead, although those watching this now would certainly now know of him. Yeah, first ever captain of the Sea Eagles. I'm sure, there'd be plenty of clubs out there. We don't necessarily remember the first captain, but if you jump on club websites or whatever, it's always going to be there, the first one. So good on Max Whitehead.
You're immortalised at a club.
Yeah,
you're the first ever captain.
Yeah. All righty, the last one, we're going for 7 from 10. So if you get this, it'll be equal first with young Griffin Neame from the Cowboys.
Yeah, nice.
Which 2 Manly players have captained Australia? I'll give you 0.5 of a point for if you get one, and if you get both, I'll give you the full point.
Okay, one's Bobby Fulton, and the other I think is Max Krilich.
So Max Krilich is one, but Bob Fulton's not on here as a captain.
Yeah, I think he did captain Australia. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, now you've brought it up, I'm going to double check. I've got the records list up here. Hold on, folks. Let's just check this out, because I might have had a stinker, or maybe Manly's had a stinker, because now that you bring up Bob Fulton, because he coached Australia as well, didn't he?
Yeah, coached Australia, played. After some of his achievements in the game, he captain coached the City side when he was 19 or something. The City side, you're captain men.
Yeah, okay.
Unbelievable.
So Manly's official website has Krilich and Jeff Tuvey in 96, but they don't.
Oh, yeah. And 96 against Fiji. Yeah, right. They don't have Bozo.
I don't know why. You know what? I'm going to do a quick Google search, though, because I feel like you'd have to be correct. Because, it's come up straight away that he's coached Australia, but, I mean, you just think he'd
played lots of tests. I assume that Bose had captained. He captained New South Wales. I'm pretty sure they said he captained Australia, but it may not be.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of him. But when you brought him up straight away, I thought I've made a mistake here, but I can't find anything.
No, well, it would have been there if he had him.
Yeah, so I can give you the 6.5 out of 10.
Yep.
But I don't. There's nothing here that says he's ever captained Australia, but I would have thought so too, because straight away it came up captain coach of City, like you just brought up.
Fulton had an endless list, but he would be on the Manly website if that was the case.
Yeah. So 6.5 out of 10. It's a good effort. And you know what? I think the questions you got wrong, they weren't too bad. Obviously, Max Whitehead, first Manly captain back in 47. If there is anyone out there who would have known that off the top of their head, I'd like to meet them, because that would be quite the effort. The year Manly first made the grand final, you got it at 70, and they did actually make the grand final that year, and it was against South Sydney, but it was just in 1951. When did Manly last win the minor premiership? You said 96, it was 97, a year off. And then it was who was Manly's first captain, Max Whitehead, and the other one, you said Krilich and Bozo, it was Krilich and Tuvey, but I'm shocked that Bozo never captained Australia.
Yeah, that's the first bloke I thought of, was Bozo.
Yeah, who would have been their captain around that time? Is that when one of the St George players were?
Yeah, Langlands, someone like that, maybe. I don't know if Tommy ever captained Australia, but he was in those sides with them when they had those ridiculously good sides.
Yeah. Well, 6.5 out of 10. It's the same score that Freedy got in the Broncos one. But I feel like in terms of the questions you got wrong, I also like to gauge it on the questions you got wrong. I think you probably did a bit better. If you get me, you're probably a bit closer with the ones you got wrong. You didn't tip that Brisbane lost their first 5 games in 1988 when they actually won all 5. So that's a good effort there. So you tied second on the leaderboard, and let's see if you can stay there for a while. We'll see how future guests go, but I'll have to get you on again just for general rugby league history one time. We'll see how we go there.
Yeah, no, see how we go. I'll come back on. We'll do a preview of the finals, something like that. If you want, sounds good.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, when
Super Cup kicks back off this weekend, which would be great for the people and the community. Yeah. Disappointing about New South Wales Cup, but like the bigger problems in New South than playing footy, unfortunately. But yeah, that should be great. Some great North leading the charge. They've just signed Nemo McDonald over this COVID break, and him on the wing. So they've got him. They've got Tyrone Roberts there now. They got Nemo McDonald. They had Danny Levi before he signed with the Broncos. I haven't know. There's some NRL clubs have sent some boys back this week. Like the Melbourne have sent a few boys back to both Sunny Coast and to East Tigers. The Titans guys, I didn't see that Anthony Don wasn't named for the Titans or anything like that. Or Greg Mershew, I think he got injured. He might have got injured last week, but if not, they could be late inclusions if they're healthy. They've been the Tanner Boyd, who's played a few games for the Titans the last few years. He normally comes back to Burleigh when he's not required for the top side. So that'll be interesting to see how it goes. Wynnum normally get a few Broncos guys, but most of it, the guys the Broncos are using up there, like Cobbo and that, they're normally with Wynnum, but they've now established themselves in the NRL squad. So it should be. What's that, mate?
I was just going to say, is that the big issue with Wynnum, because they started 9-0 and they've sort of just, I know they've won a couple games since, but they've just sort of dropped off.
Yeah,
is that the big reason why? A lot of players going up
without some guys like Cobbo and not being there, they've lost a few. Brady Croft was playing for a while too. He was in the halves with Sam Scarlett, another good Intrust Super Cup half who's been around, played a lot of clubs. SA, guys like that, all of a sudden not being there. They've got Isaac Luke there too. Isaac Luke, I assume he's there full time because there's some guys they didn't take into the bubble. They just left. Richie Kenner, he played for him. He's there. So they've got quite a few Bronco players, and they were the top side. Now Norths are out in front by about 3 games. So
I was just going to say, are Norths your favourite to win it?
They'd have to be. I think they'll be there. It'd take a good side to beat them. Burleigh have beaten them. Burleigh the only side that beat them. Burleigh beat them 30-0.
Yeah,
that's a strong Burleigh side.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to bring up Burleigh because, like, through work writing the articles, I've been keeping track of the Q Cup, and it seems like Burleigh, they didn't start the season off the best, but they seem to be the hot team coming through. Sort of now that the whips are starting to crack, heading into the finals, they might be the form team. I think
they're running. They're third at the moment. The Tweeter up there. They used to get quite a few Titans guys, but Burleigh they've got a lot of actual Burleigh players. They've had some Titans guys over the years, but they're very, they've got a strong culture there, and Burleigh they think they can beat everybody. They just have that mindset. They go in, you know what I mean? So, like, they could get, I don't know if Fogarty got named this week in the Titans side. I assume he did. But if he was to get left out, he'd be playing for Burleigh. like I think he wouldn't obviously be able to play finals, but
Yeah.
things like that. And the young half from the Titans, the Palm
Sexton?
Beach Rummakin, yeah, he's been playing with Tweed
Right. Yeah.
before he got called up, and he's a good young player coming through. So yeah, I saw their side before, and they've named Tyrone Peachy at 6, and he hasn't named Sexton, which is quite surprised. Ash Taylor got left out. I'm surprised Sexton didn't get a crack with Fogarty, but he may well do. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. But anyway, Righty, I want to thank you for jumping on today. Are you proud of your effort? Do you reckon you could have done a bit
Yeah,
better, a
mate.
bit
Yeah.
worse?
No, with the tough ones, like I didn't do any research on it. This is all off my head. I did forget about. I forgot two's had captained Australia because I only played one test that particular year, right at the end of the year against. Oh, they played two actually. Played Fiji earlier on, and they played PNG later in the year.
Right.
So yeah, that was when he must have captained them in the last one, I think. But yeah, how can I forget the great man, Jeff Tooby?
Yeah. Yeah, well, would that have been those tests against PNG and Fiji? Would they have been sort of maybe a Prime Minister's 13
It
sort of
was the
setup?
equivalent
Or
of, but it was an actual official. They took
right,
all the one against PNG was just like how their Prime Minister 13 playing, but they took an official side. They won by 50 something, but yeah, there were quite a few Manly blokes in there who won the comp, like Daniel Gartner. Gartner was a real good back rower. He had a real good club career, and that was his only representative appearance. He played that Test for Australia, and Andrew Walker. Andrew Walker
right,
played for Australia, and that time Andrew Walker had a great career at the Wallabies. Had a great career in the NRL. All the skills in the world, Andrew Walker. And he's still playing old boys rugby now, I think, running around. He lives just near Brizzy, lives out near Ipswich.
yeah,
And yeah, he made his debut in that test, yeah. So a few blokes got opportunities. That was the thing with the Super League War. It balanced the game a lot, but it gave some blokes opportunities. I'm not saying it was good for the game, but there are a lot of guys who got either New South Wales or Australian jerseys or Queensland jerseys that may not have if it had been the combined competition. Opened the door and showed what a lot of those sort of players could do.
yeah. Because I believe in '95, possibly also '96, Brisbane players were banned from representative football, weren't they?
Yeah, and they went to court over. They refused to pick any Super League guys in '95, and then by '96 they were picking everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
when Fatty as coach and the Maroons won 3-0, and
Yeah.
they picked a kid from the Gold Coast who'd played 4 games named Ben Ikin and things like that. Terry Cook, from the South Queensland Crushers, played Origin. Cook retired a couple of years after that. He was back playing for North. But Terry Cook he was a centre they got from the country, and he started off his career at the Gold Coast Seagulls. And yeah, he ended up playing guys like Craig Teven. Craig Teven played 3 Origins that year. Bit of a journeyman, but that's a pretty special thing. He played Origin, and
Yeah,
that was
definitely.
that was the year that a lot of they expanded and they brought the 4 expansion teams in: the Warriors, the
Yeah.
Crushers. Um, uh, who else was there? The Cowboys, of course. Um, and they all came in. Melbourne came in '98. Western Reds, came in as well. When Melbourne came in '98, they had a good administration. They
Yeah.
recruited well. The Hunter Mariners had died after the Super League War, and they got a lot of their players. They recruited players. They got Glenn Lazarus there, and they started well. And they
Yeah.
finished third the first year and won it the second. When the Crushers came in, it was a rabble. They had a lot of old blokes who were really towards the end of their career. They had some good young guys in there, and they had some rugby union converts like Garrick Morgan. They paid him big money to come over to jump codes. Garrick Morgan played 2 first grade games and played reserve grade for the rest of that year, and they released him. He went back to rugby.
Yeah,
Anthony Herbert was a good rugby union fullback who was towards the end of his career. He jumped ship. He played a handful of games, and then he ended up playing like front row in reserve grade. He was playing fullback in A grade. Things like that. They just didn't recruit well. They got fellas like Trevor Gilmeister was there, one of the great Queenslanders. He was towards the end of his career. He retired after 96. Things like that, and just financial troubles. So I'm hoping with whoever, if this new expansion team comes in, the talk is it'll probably be Redcliffe. I hope they've got a decent squad going in, like, you know what I mean? Because they don't expect you to win the comp fans early, but they want to see go. You want to believe you can win when you go and you're paying your money to go. And
I think that.
I was real disappointed about the Western Reds dying in the arse because I think we need to do that. Like, you know, they reckon it was great over there, but the travel costs. They used to pay for away sides to fly to them, and away sides would pay for them to fly to them. It was wasn't viable in the long run. Adelaide 2 came Super League year. Adelaide lasted a couple of years, 97, 98, and then unfortunately just wasn't to be.
Nah, well, hopefully with this new side that comes in, they follow that Melbourne Storm model because that's probably the best example we've seen. Can obviously
they had John
Rebo, as well, but it's sort of setting a team up for success, not necessarily winning the comp the first year, although Melbourne won the comp in their second year, but sort of.
They had John Rebo as the CEO, and Rebo had got the Broncos up and running. And then later on, Rebo helped. He was one of the head honchos at the Brisbane Roar when they started having success. You know, in that. So you need good backroom staff, but you've got to be able to attract a coach who can help you build, like the right coach. And they got Chris Anderson, who'd had success with the Bulldogs. Anderson went on to coach Australia later on. Things like that. You need blokes who's coaching. The first thing, any football club anywhere in the world, if you're trying to get people there, they're going to ask who the coach is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I heard Shane Richardson talking last night about, like, with the Firehawks bid, which is basically his Tigers. And he said, you know, you're talking fantasy football at the moment. You've got to wait till you've got a side before you start talking about who the coach should be and who you should look at recruiting. Because throwing names out now, it's just, it's just, there's no point. You know, Munster's been mentioned that he wouldn't mind moving back to Queensland at some stage. That could be 5 years. That could be 10 years. You know, maybe not 10, but that could be 5 years from now, 6 years. You know, that could be the last couple of years of his career. Who knows with Cameron Munster?
Yeah, well, the thing is, well, if they bring in a Munster, for example, they're not necessarily going to be able to bring in the best team in the world, which I think a lot of people have sort of got caught up in. They could bring in Munster, Pappenhausen, etc. Well, no, if they were to bring in a Munster or a Pappenhausen, then look at every team in the NRL, you can only really fit in sort of 3 superstars, and then you can build a solid roster.
Not everywhere is Melbourne that can, develop these guys like your Chris Lewis's, Tom Eisenhuth, and etc. To get them to be great contributors to your side, turn a play. Jerome Hughes, I remember watching him in 2015 play for the Blackhawks. He was with the Cowboys. He was playing for the Blackhawks in the grand final. He was a good cup player. And getting a game, he got 1 or 2 games, but you would never have thought he was going to develop into one of the best halfbacks in the comp. But they saw that at Melbourne, and they knew his running game was his strength. They just had to work on his ball playing. Now his game management, his kicking game's outstanding. When they first threw him in there and they lost in the prelim, he was still finding his way. By the next year, they win the comp. Now they're leading the comp again. The next season. not everybody can develop like that. You've got to have a coach in there like that, and getting someone like Wayne Bennett in to be the head honcho to oversee. You've got to keep developing blokes and bringing them through, especially in a place like Queensland where it's cutthroat now. If that's another Queensland club, that gives people who don't want to leave Queensland another option to go and play at. And that's the thing. I think they'll announce it pretty soon. Like, it's a big thing. I think we do need to expand, but it's a bit of a surprise with everything that's going on financially in the world. But it's good to see they're pushing on, and the league need money. And when they cut these TV rights deals, if you've got an extra side, that's an extra time slot for Fox or Channel 9 to show a game.
Yeah.
That was another thing. When they expanded, like when the Broncos and the Gold Coast first name were the Giants, they had I think they had 8 months to build the club up. 8 months before they played. 8 months, 10 months. It was something ridiculous. And like who was it? The Titans came in 2007. They got
announced
the
05, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they got the green light in 2005. So and then for their first year, so they had plenty of they had time to build, and I don't like things like that. And so in turn, you're really signing good reserve grade players in those situations, but you can't build a full season. That's what happened with the Cowboys. Grant Bell was the first coach there. He was a reserve grade coach at the Seagulls, and they'd had a good side in reserve grade with a lot of young guys coming through, and I think they made the final, so he signed a lot of them, and it was hard to get guys up there. So the first few years were real tough for them. The only trouble is fans don't want to go. That happened with the Crushers, and the Crushers added players in, and they'd win a few here and there, but you're paying money. People can sit at home and watch it, or they can go to the local pub and have a meal and watch it and have a beer, and going on the footy's not cheap sometimes. And if you're having a couple of beers or having something to eat.
Yeah.
So people want to know that you're a fair chance to win, or you're just going to compete. And the thing with some of these sides, and that's a frustration the West Tigers fans seem to have. They've got some talented players there, and they've had some wins. Yet they're far from consistent. And as you watch that doco Tiger Town, you see that in our people in their inner sanctum. And full credit to them for doing that, because they wouldn't have expected to be. It was a ballsy move to let them come in and see things like that, and see Madge Maguire's raw passion, and see how things are happening, and see Justin Pascoe, the CEO, how he operates, and all these sort of things now. And everyone wants to kick you when you're down or bag. You get on social media, people are bagging Justin Pascoe about his hair. What the fuck? Holy shit! I really couldn't give. He's a different sort of a dude, but that's not the reason why they're not winning games. Things like that, then they're just not consistent enough. And Maguire looks for a certain style of player. When they won that at South, he had a tough side. They're not mentally tough like that yet. They just need to keep building and maybe cut a bit of dead wood, and every side gets to that. And you look at it, after the first month of Manly's season this year, there would have been a lot of blokes whose heads were potentially on the chopping block if that was, if they had to make decisions on their future in the following month. Now, Saab looked like a reserve grader in the first month, and then he found his mojo, got confident, scoring tries now. Looks like, an exciting winger now. Guys like Ruben Garrick. We just talked about Garrick. Garrick's the leading point scorer in the comp, I should say. Things like that. Like in the beginning, he wasn't in form. A lot of guys. Daly Cherry Evans was copping a lot of flack because he wasn't playing his best footy, I should say, because their forwards weren't dominating, and he was concerned, worried about other things. That people criticising signing Kieran Foran. All of a sudden, they have that win against the Warriors. Everyone's a bit more confident. Turbo comes back and kills it, everyone flows on from that. And that's the thing. That's how they managed to win that game the other night without him. They toughed it out. At 12-0 down at halftime without Turbo against the Raiders, you would have had money that they could not have come back from that. Their halves led them round. Their forwards, they corrected what they were doing wrong. They started completing better. They started not playing so sideways. Daly's kicking game was excellent. Him and Foran led them around, and they won the game and put them in a position to push for a top 4 spot, depending on results the next 2 weeks. Things like that. Like, a season's a long time, so you can start great and die in the arse very quickly. And then the same people that were cheering, you're talking about you making the top 8, are sinking the boot in. Like the day they had the West Tigers for Tommy Rodonicus, and they played terrible in that first half and came back and almost beat the West and almost beat the Cowboys. And the Cowboys they'd only had a couple of wins at that stage. All those sort of things, people feel gypped because they're spending their money going there. They're paying for their memberships. They have a say. They want to have a say in how a club's run. And with them to open up there was one guy, a West Tigers reporter. He got David Nufaluma's face tattooed on his arm because he said the last few years he's been my favourite player. If he resigns, I agree to get his tattoo. Well, okay, these guys are passionate. Good on these people. So, of course, they're going to be filthy. And it's hard on a bloke like Maguire because he's super passionate. In my opinion with them, I just don't think they have enough Michael Maguire-style players. You've got to as a coach, you've got to be able to recruit the blokes you want. And you saw what happened when Des got the arse at Canterbury.
Yeah.
It didn't work. So signed him at Manly, everyone thought this a bit, this is going to be, will this work? And he moulded things in. And he'll slowly filter some blokes out. He'll filter some blokes in that he wants to use. Turning Josh Schuster into a back rower. When like a superstar player as a kid coming through. And people forget that he did play a bit in the forwards as a kid. And the position was back row. He looks like a black rower. He looks like a back rower now. You know what I mean? He's that sort of rampage. He's a big, strong, skillful, old school sort of. He could spend a few years there now, depending on who comes through as 5'8" there. Because he's playing. He's an 80-minute back rower now. You know what I mean? So that sort of thing. We all know what he can do with the ball, and he's starting to get a bit smarter with the ball. Things like that. Like you take chances on blokes, or blokes get an opportunity that they might not have got so early, and all of a sudden you need them. Like in the beginning, with the amount of injuries Manly had, like you're wondering where they were getting players from, and I was questioning the depth of their roster. So with this Tiger Town, you see all that, and you see the people's frustration. They wanted to do the same sort of a doco on the Queensland team last year, but Wayne Bennett, he vetoed it because he knew he had to unite the group and cause an ambush. He didn't want cameras floating around, for better or for worse, But these sort of things, like clubs, it's easy to everyone to jump on when you're winning, and to still have a lot of supporters because they have great success. Look at the Roosters, how tough they are. You know what I mean? Wherever they finish, they might not win any awards. They might not be minor premiers. They might not make a grand final, but they're a tough football club, and they just keep fighting. Them and South this week is going to be a ding dong battle. See how South bounce back. Things like that, like Penrith starting when they lost a couple. People starting to think, are they gone? Well, if this was in the finals, you could think that, but not like 4 or 5 weeks out.
No way.
But that's it. All right, mate. Thank you for having me on the show. I'll jump back on in a few weeks and we'll talk a bit more footy if you like.
Oh, definitely. We'll need to work out something maybe even semi-regular because probably the most knowledgeable man in rugby league personally that I know, and you've just
Thanks, mate.
You've had me hooked. If my computer wasn't about to die in a couple of minutes, I'd have you on for the rest of the night. But, righty, I'll get you on soon. And, yeah, thank you for jumping on.
No worries, Ollie. Happy birthday, mate. You're a great bloke. You're doing a lot of good things. Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, no worries. See you soon.
See you, mate. Take care.